The Pirates didn't collapse in August. They just paused it for the winter. Some teams, same leadership, same result. Let's talk about what went wrong, what players are saying, and who still managed to shine despite everything.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Pirates, your daily podcast covering all things Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm your host, Gary Morgan, and today we're talking about internal frustrations, off-season hopes, and the deeper story of organizational dysfunction. A team awards I'm going to go ahead and give out to honor individual efforts. I think we should get into all of it right away. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Go to www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. So before we get into this, there's a great piece written by Noah Hiles. If you haven't read it, make sure you go and read it over at the Post-Gazette. A lot of player quotes. I'm going to be pulling from some of them as I talk today. Real good end of the season wrap up type thing from him. I just want to get into a couple of things that I've heard because as the season has ended here, the obvious questions are right there. And unfortunately, I don't have anything for you that's concrete about Ben Cherington, but I can tell you what I've heard most recently is that Bob Nutting is inclined to hold on to him and give him one more year to make a go of this thing. I will say before we get into a big panic, this is the exact same position he had back in 2019 when he fired Neil Huntington and Frank Coonelly. It certainly wasn't his intention to do so, but public pressure and pressure from the local journalist crowd, I think, changed his mind. I think we could probably see that same sort of thing again, although it sounds very much so to me like at least the executive group is moving forward as though they have a plan and marching orders, and they've already articulated said plan to everyone involved, and feels to me like this thing started rolling down the hill a little too far to be thinking that they're in the same spot they were when they made the coaching change way back when. So I just want to get that out of the way. It's just what I've heard. It doesn't mean that it's the most accurate thing. I certainly am not going to sit here and tell you that I heard it from Bob Nutting, but I heard it from enough people that are pretty involved with continuing to keep the machine working that it feels pretty plausible to me that Ben Cherington will be retained as the general manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2026. My initial question back had no hope of getting answered, but my thought was, is this because he's got a couple years left on his deal? I know that this is a decision Bob's made before to go ahead and move forward on things like this. And again, I think a significant amount of pressure, he probably could be persuaded to do the same thing again this time. I mean, for all I know, he could come out later this afternoon and fire him. I'm just telling you what I've heard. Again, I think that's the most fair thing I can do with you. Don't take it as gospel. Just take it as what I'm working with. I've heard it from people that I feel confident enough in that I'm going to move forward at least until I see or hear otherwise, under the supposition that Ben Cherington is returning. And I think the players are too, just based on some of these exit interview comments that they had. Players seem to believe that the team isn't too far from contending if ownership invests. And we've heard a lot of them make some comments in the past. I thought some were really interesting. Andrew McCutcheon said it kind of feels the same. He's basically done this 3 years in a row. He's come back 3 years in a row for the same amount of money. He's gotten the same story from management as to what they intended to do, and then he's proceeded to watch them do the exact same thing 3 years in a row, which is basically not bring in enough parts and pieces. Okay. So I don't know. He seems very disillusioned. I would think, like, of all the players on this team that have a choice to actually leave, he's one of those ones that I think probably is closest to potentially leaving based on a management disagreement. I just don't believe that he believes in this management group anymore. Um, I've heard some things, and Noah reiterated in his article that the Pirates potentially plan to even spend less next year. Now, I've heard some things on this to the other side of the story. Not that they were planning on potentially or possibly having a lower payroll next year than they did this year. Noah reported that. I have heard that reported from other people, and I'm certainly not disputing it. I'm simply here to tell you it's not what I've heard. What I heard is that they plan to um, jump up to the level that they had allotted this year, and with the subtractions that they just made, they feel like that's plenty of money. That's why they're not going to up it. At least that's their excuse. They're not going to up it because they don't think they need it. Now, the players in the room, I can tell you, feel that they need it, and that's what a lot of them tend to come up on. Like Skeens basically said that they didn't bring anything in at the deadline to really up the hopes, except for some AAA guys who we might see next year. He was hoping for a little bit more help this year. Players are frustrated with a lot of things with this team. One of the things that they had mentioned early on that they wanted the Pirates to look into was changing the color of the batter's eye, because they were having a hard time seeing, especially in those 4 o'clock starts. And since the team had basically all 4 o'clock starts and Saturdays there for quite some time, the team asked if they could potentially think about changing that batter's eye. And I think the team probably rightly said no to that. I mean, it might have helped the offense a little bit, but the team wasn't really struggling at home, were they? That's where they had their best work done and their best records produced. So it seemed to me like there was really going to help all hitters, including visiting hitters. And that's about the last thing you want to do when you're building your team around starting pitching. So I kind of side with the team on this one, like, now I could say, like, maybe you should stop having those 4 o'clock starts, take that feedback, and next year make sure that doesn't happen as often. Have night games on Saturdays if that's what you're looking to do. I would think that there has to be some kind of thing there. Overall, the players just seem frustrated with ownership, and I understand why. They're not blind to what's going on around the league, and they understand the limitations of this franchise too, better than you know. Like, I think a lot of people have this false impression that these guys are just sitting there, like, wondering why we can't spend the same as the Dodgers. Why can't they go get a guy like Shohei Ohtani? Nobody in that room is that stupid. Like, that's the best way I can put it. Nobody that suits up for the Pittsburgh Pirates is stupid enough to think that they're in the same position as every other team. They're not. They know they're not. But they also know that when you've got a lot of the components that they do have that are very hard to get in Major League Baseball, and, oh, by the way, very expensive, you should be able to be in a position to put enough around those components to make something. And that's frustrating for guys in that room. They look around that room and they see not enough. And that's not something that players are happy to admit. But the fact that players are admitting it openly in May to reporters, well, I think you kind of get what you deserve at some point. Like, it's the team you built. We'll talk a little bit more about the organization as a whole and more from the players' perspective, at least as far as the reporting that Noah Hiles had, and some of my own, and some I've heard from others. But we'll kind of fill in these pieces today. That's what we're going to do in the first two segments, and then we're going to do season awards. Okay, I can't break down the entire season in one 30-minute episode, so let's make this whole week. That's the goal. Every day we're going to pick different components that we want to go into. We're going to talk about those components. And by the time we get to the end of the week, we're going to come up with a pretty good Locked On Pirates battle plan for how we'd move forward. And we're going to pretend that somebody smart enough to execute it is actually there. So let's get started. Let's take that first break and come back and get after it. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get the boost when you need it. I'm going to be traveling a lot these next couple weeks. 5-hour energy will be in my backpack. I will absolutely use it to get through the ups and downs of getting to the airport on time, getting up early, not sleeping on the plane, everything involved in it. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold and try something new. In store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. This episode is brought to you by Zippix toothpicks. Whether you're looking for nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zippix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine-infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, Zippix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zippix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. Available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram or 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. I just got these caffeine toothpicks from them the other day. They come with this great little case. You can store your toothpicks in there, so it's not like you're fumbling with those. You just flick one out, take it. I just got done with a long drive to Charlotte, and 7 hours in the car. You need a little pick-me-up. Caffeine toothpicks are great for that. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com. Use code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. Must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's zippixtoothpicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix toothpicks. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Hey, it's a bad organization from top to bottom. So I really appreciate you guys coming here and watching this show every single day. And while you're here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Hit me with a comment. I need your feedback on this show. A lot of interactive stuff, especially in segment 3 today. So a bad organization, it's a deep dysfunction in this Pirates system. And it goes all the way back to Derek Shelton. Apparently, there was a lot of extra pressure on Derek Shelton to win this year. And the weird thing is, reportedly, it was not pressure that he really felt until he got to 2025. And I would have to imagine this is because he came a short hair away from getting fired earlier. And Ben Cherington saved his job. So he felt some pressure. And because he felt that pressure, he was changing who he was as a coach. He was somebody that was very understanding of the growing pains, and probably would consider him a player's coach, I would say, is a safe way to put it. But something changed in this spring training where he started making sure he was pointing fingers a little bit more and blaming others. And I don't mean necessarily just the team, but the players too, like the guys in the room. I think some of that should be accepted and acceptable. I kind of want my coach doing some of that stuff. So to hear the players complain about that, I kind of felt was disingenuous, because the only way to really stop that from happening is to do the things that he's losing his hair over. And this team hasn't done that. There was also reportedly some frustration from Derek Shelton that he made apparent to everyone, that they didn't make enough offseason changes despite the 2024 collapse. So it was tension and desperation, and a lot of players blamed the poor culture on the way they started with Derek Shelton. He had extra influence that I think a lot of us didn't know, as far as the decision-making process of hiring staff even lower in the organization. He was seen kind of as, because he was the top coach, he had some say in all the other coaching that was hired. And I think this is a case maybe of one incompetent person hiring another incompetent person, and then it's a perfect storm of incompetence. They one guy really trusts that the other knows how to do his job, and he doesn't, and neither of them do anything about it. The players claim that this environment had them playing super tight at the beginning of the season. Nick Gonzalez claims it created a lack of identity or shared goals. And when Shelton was inevitably dismissed, the broader organizational issues kind of made themselves apparent, because right away you were able to find out what Don Kelly was and wasn't able to fix, what he was and wasn't able to address. The team has been frustrated, and this is the players, they've been frustrated with call-up decisions for some of these young pitchers. Apparently they wanted some of these moves to come much earlier in the season. I think there was a little bit of a fan backlash about it, because a lot of us know what it takes to knock the rookie out of a kid, and we know it's a lot more than 3 or 4 weeks at the end of a season. So I think when we all realized the season was going a certain way, it was natural for us to feel like it was time to maybe start seeing some of that youth. I mean, we don't have position players to call up readily, but we got all these pitchers. Can we at least get that nailed down? Can we at least start sorting through that? I think that's what people wanted to see. And I think it's what the players wanted to see. I can't speak for whether the players fully understand or grasp or care about, pitching limits and slow ramp ups and everything. I would imagine the pitchers do, because we've discussed ad nauseum here, Paul Skeens is a guy that openly buys into it. He understands why he's being limited, and he doesn't seem to have an issue with it. So why would he have an issue with it being the case for anyone else? Now, that doesn't mean that he has to believe that that couldn't take place at the major league level. And that's probably where he is at. But they're very frustrated, I think, as a whole by some of those decisions. Management, lower than Ben Charrington, I think, was very frustrated that there just wasn't very much to pull from at the AAA level offensively, because they knew things were going badly, but there was just nothing that could be done once the season's underway. I mean, the opportunity to address those things was back when you signed Tommy Pham and whatnot. And while Tommy Pham became a popular player in the room, the message of signing Tommy Pham definitely hit some of these players. They realized that was the best they were going to get. And it set the tone for really how the whole season would go. They never felt supported coming off of 2024. They never felt like it was a stepping stone that it should have been. They didn't feel like they were handed a team that should have done a whole lot better. In fact, there's a quote in the article where somebody, and the player is unnamed, although I think I know who it might be. And I'll even take a stab at it because I'm not the reporter. I'm allowed to. I think it was Kutch. But a player looked around the room in May and said, "We're not underachieving. We're doing exactly what 90 million buys you." And that's not an untrue statement. In fact, I could tell you for what the Pirates paid in payroll this year, they probably slightly overachieved, believe it or not. I know that sounds crazy, but just based on their payroll really treading water, they overachieved. They were actually very fortunate to get as many contributions from young, controllable, unpaid players as they did. So the players are justified in their frustrations here. That's two segments of basically player frustrations and rumors about more things not changing. I honestly think this Ben Cherington decision, as much as I believe my sources that Bob is being told, to move on, but he's deciding not to. I think he might be a matter of being told by the right players that it's going to completely change their perception of this baseball team. Paul Skeens and Andrew McCutchen in particular, I have a very strong feeling that Andrew McCutchen only comes back if there's a different GM. I just get the impression that he does not have any belief or faith that this general manager can win here. And I don't think that means he paints Bob Nutting as Snow White. I believe, again, he's one of the ones that has referenced payroll in particular. But I do believe that the two of them together at least are not seen as something that can win a World Series. And that's by players that, want one very desperately. Andrew McCutchen desperately wants to put on a ring before he's done. It's very hard for me to sit here and pretend that that's right around the corner with a couple shrewd moves. And I don't think that he's dumb. Andrew's a smart guy. Now, he may get more out of an interaction like he had with Charlie Morton and watching that whole scenario play out as far as what he does next year than any of the thoughts that are swirling in his head about what this team does or doesn't do towards trying. But it just makes too much sense for Andrew to overcome a lot of his mental hang-ups with this baseball team and find his way back to it. That said, if he feels as strongly about Ben Cherington as I think he does, I could very much so see him going elsewhere. I really could. If only because I think he might feel it's his last resort to really shake some sense into Bob Nutting, who he is close to. Listen, that's the first two segments of the postseason here on Locked On Pirates. There's going to be a lot more. We're going to get into a lot of stats. We're going to get into tendering guys and people that we could potentially go sign. I'm not saying all this is going to be this week, but this offseason is not going to be a slouch. And it can't be because it's far too important for what they have built to just stop now and pretend that they can't build on it further. They really should be able to. They really could do it. And there really are ways that I think they could quickly put this team on the right path. And the best way to do that is to acknowledge it wasn't all bad. There was some good, and that's the next segment. We're going to talk about what was good. Okay, a couple of my categories aren't about being good, but for the most part, this is the team awards, and it's mostly good stuff. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Money, 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 everybody. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Hey, yo, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. I'm really happy you're here. Segment 3 today is going to be the Pirates 2025 Team Awards. I think this is going to be fun. You guys love this stuff, right? It's easier than grades. We'll do grades later, but I thought that would be a boring segment, and I wanted to try to have at least one bright spot in every episode as we go through this week, because otherwise it's going to sound like a funeral proceeding, and I don't want it to, okay? I really don't. There were some good things. Team MVP, I think this is Paul Skeens. I really do. Despite his win-loss record, Paul Skeens was the most consistently impactful player on this baseball team all year long. And I just don't see any way to go anywhere else than Team MVP Paul Skeens. It certainly can't be an offensive player, can it? And if it's going to be a pitcher, doesn't it have to be the best one? Yeah, Paul Skeens. Best hitter. This one might surprise you, but I'm going Spencer Horwitz. And it's not just how he finished. I felt like he was really consistent all year long. Ended up with his OPS up over 780, 272 batting average. He ended up with 11 home runs. He did it all in 108 games. And a lot of those games he ended up getting pulled out of early. He finished second on the club in doubles. I mean, like, are these things you were actually aware of while he was playing? He may not be the first base Albert Pujols masher that you wanted the Pirates to go out and get that didn't exist, but he is a very viable first baseman, and he is the Pirates' best hitter of 2025. Best pitcher, Paul Skeens, doy, right? I mean, like, do you want me to elaborate? I think we've done that for his Cy Young conversation. Best defender. I was torn on this one between Jared Triolo and Henry Davis, but I'm going to go to Henry Davis. And the reason I'm going with Henry Davis is because you can't possibly hit as terribly as Henry Davis hit in 2025 and still have a ton of value. There is not a pitcher on this team that wouldn't prefer throwing to Henry versus anybody else they have as an option. He was the best defender, period. Huge step forward for him, for real. Best reliever, again, I'm torn. I think it's probably Dennis Santana, but I really, really had a hard time not picking Isaac Mattson. Isaac Mattson handled so many different situations for this team. He's played fireman for them. He's been a back-end reliever. He's come in to relieve a starter in the third inning before. Like, Isaac Mattson has done a ton of different stuff, mostly with his fastball. He reminds me a ton of Richard Rodriguez with maybe a little bit better secondary stuff. But Isaac Mattson just came out of nowhere. I have to give it to Dennis Santana, though. I really do. First, took over a closing role. Not an easy thing to do. Took over a closing role for a very popular local player. Again, not an easy thing to do. To come out of 2025 not being hated out of this bullpen, when you had anything to do with closing out games is kind of unbelievable. But I'm going Dennis Santana, I think. Breakout player for me, Braxton Ashcraft. We don't talk about him nearly enough. He was tremendous this year in every role they tried to put him in. The attitude was tremendous this year. He understood like the innings restrictions. He understood why he was starting in the bullpen. He understood why he was getting starts when he got them and why they'd be shorter. He understood if he was piggybacking one day, what his goal should be. Braxton Ashcraft just was an impressive rookie. He never looked like a rookie. He never played like a rookie. He didn't pitch like a rookie. He didn't interact with people like a rookie. Braxton Ashcraft, to me, was by far the breakout rookie of the year. I loved every minute of it. Biggest surprise for me was Spencer Horwitz. I didn't expect him to put on as much of an offensive display as he did this year after coming back from the wrist. I expect those wrist injuries to last a good 3 months into the season, and he came back relatively healthy and got himself acclimated again really quickly. So kudos to Spencer Horwitz. Rookie of the year, again, I'm going Braxton Ashcraft. I know there was other impressive pitchers. Mike Burrows comes to mind. Um, I thought that he had a really good chance to be the rookie of the year for the Pirates this year. It certainly couldn't have been any hitters. Braxton Ashcraft to me gets that rookie of the year. Heart and hustle. I'm going Jared Triolo again. Here's another year where they bounced him all over the diamond. He got better as the season went on. He went down to AAA and came back and looked a lot better. Defense never evaded him. He was good all the time. He was always hustling. He was always running out even his pathetic ground balls that he hit at the beginning of the season. But that to me is the dude, Jared Triolo, heart and hustle. Unsung hero. I couldn't give the reliever of the year to Isaac Matson, but I think I'm going to give him the unsung hero because he really did come out of nowhere. I would have given this to Chase Shugart. He was playing fireman early in the season, and much like Isaac Matson, filling in a ton of roles all over the back end of the bullpen, middle relief, wherever they needed him, multiple innings, couple, percentage points of an inning to get a strikeout. I'm going to go with Braxton or with Isaac Matson, though. I think he deserves it. Clubhouse leader. This to me is Skeens. I don't think there's much of a question there. He has taken over that role. I think there's other guys in that room that wish it was them and think it should be them, but it's Paul Skeens, and I think it's clear. Fan favorite Skeens, come on now. He's the only one we have a day for, right? Player to watch in 2026, I'm going to go with Hunter Barco. I've loved what I've seen from him down the stretch here, and I think he's got a really good shot out of all the guys who didn't really get a whole lot of a look to come out of spring training with a role in the Pirates rotation. I think he's got every chance to win that spot, although I do worry about how much they're going to allow him to pitch next year. Minor league standout, this is obvious too. Connor Griffin, shouldn't be difficult for you. And while I said, the best defender earlier, biggest failure to me is Henry Davis because he was supposed to be a stick first. And this team desperately needed that stick, and it just didn't show up. Really needed to show up a lot more than it did. I just want to highlight the dysfunction versus the individual excellence. The team as a whole didn't do very well this year, but individually they had a few guys step up that I think matter for next year. They had a few guys really underperform drastically this year too, which we'll probably spend an entire episode talking about. What awards would you like to give out? What moves do you think will actually get us better? That's really how we're going to move forward this week. If I missed any awards you'd like me to give out, pop them in the questions there. Pop them in the comments. Let me know what awards I should give out. And then when we start talking about moving forward, I really just want to talk honestly about what we think could truly make things better. That's this week. Buckle up, because while the Pirates aren't in the off season, we certainly are. We are going to celebrate baseball. We're going to talk about the playoffs a lot. The field is pretty interesting that just got put forward. I figured we could take a day here and talk and focus on the Pirates before we get into that. It's going to be a busy week. A lot of content still going to come your way. Obviously, I'm not going to have like the post-game shorts anymore. So I think I'm going to try to transition the shorts thing into more of a daily thought, not unlike the 5 thoughts that I used to write over at Steel City Pirates. I'll just start doing a daily thought, and we'll see if we can get some interaction going with that. I'd like to keep that going. You guys seem to really like interacting with those almost as much as the show sometimes. So that's all I got for you today. Let's go Bucks.